All right, so today we're here with John Bartmann, and I guess to start it off, tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. Yeah, it's great to be here and fan of both of your work. What I do is I make Creative Commons music predominantly. I've had some commercial releases in the past, but nowadays I'm focusing on just putting music out into a form that people can use in their own videos and games. So, but that's the kind of formal answer. The informal answer is I sit in a dark room most days, just kind of like sweating over stuff that I love.
Yeah, no doubt. As most musicians do. Yeah. Exactly. Can you tell our audience about what Creative Commons is and like what it's all about for those uninitiated?
Sure. Well, if you think of like what is a musician, you ask most people what's a musician or a music producer. The image that most people will conjure up is someone who produces music, writes original music, releases it, gets noticed by someone, plugs it on Spotify, gets kind of maybe some national or regional radio play, becomes some kind of touring musician, sells merch, sells tickets. That's the trajectory of your typical kind of commercial musician, also known as kind of winning the jackpot. But there are people like me who write music predominantly for, soundtrack usage and non-commercial usage. So we serve independent game makers and independent video artists, and there are millions and millions of people releasing music on the internet that just does not get any airtime or airplay other than a couple of clicks on YouTube. And so that's kind of the playing field that we're in. And I think, part of my career as a Creative Commons artist so far has been showing that there are actually alternatives to the commercial trajectory, and that Creative Commons is a very, if not a noble cause, like just perhaps actually something that might serve you better in the long run as someone who has a talent for creating music. So that's kind of where I stand, like on the ideological front. I believe in the whole process of not just trying to win the jackpot, but actually serving the community and sort of creating an ecosystem around the raw talent. That's what this is all about. Yeah, so that's the.
So is it kind of like, let's say like I'm developing a game or something like that. I'm putting together something and I need maybe a soundtrack or maybe I need sound effects or something like that. Is that something that I would go to find Creative Commons music for to kind of put that in the game?
Yeah, exactly.
Is it kind of that idea?
And it's not limited to sound and music. Creative Commons is a legal code which encompasses all creative works. So by law, US law and basically all law, you are, as the author of a work, as a creator of something, you are the 100% copyright owner. You can then choose to split those types of rights with various publishers or whatever, or you can retain them all on your own and try to publish it on your own. What Creative Commons does, though, is it says, okay, given, according to law, we've got this you're 100% copyright owner, but this is a code which allows you to state publicly that you would voluntarily give away some of those rights. In other words, the right to reproduce the work. And then there are other tiers. Like one is the right to reproduce the work under certain conditions, like the author, the person reproducing it has to credit you or has to not make any derivatives of it or whatever. Those kind of like different ways of doing it. But at the heart of it, it's basically saying I voluntarily contribute some of the rights to reproduce this work to the community in exchange for attribution or credit, or in the case of public domain licenses, in exchange for nothing at all.
Yeah. Is there an actual monetary path to, like, say, sync licensing? Would that be some part of Creative Commons, like having your music out there, having your work out there, and then someone, might find it?
The question about how to make money using Creative Commons music is like, I wish I could say, here's how you make all this money, but I'm very open about my figures. I released an album in 2019 that became my most popular album. It's had about 60,000 plays on YouTube alone. And I think in total, I've had tens of millions of plays of usages of my music in various videos around the internet. So like literally a lot of people have heard my stuff, but there's not a lot of royalties streaming attached to that. So I'm not earning a lot from Spotify. But what I'm finding is that this is the most incredible marketing exercise that I have stumbled on in my like 20 years of trying to get people to just listen to my music, is that when you give it away and you say, I'm standing for something, I'm a Creative Commons artist, everybody kind of sees you and goes, okay, this guy's not getting paid for it. And the opportunities that come from that, for me, at least have resulted in like, commission works. I've done 2 commissions since December. and licensing. So you're actually, for example, CBS Gem, which is a TV streaming service based in Canada, they approached me 2 weeks ago, and I sold the rights to use the music in their production. So it's when people notice you, then you can start to talk business. But the problem with being a commercial musician or a non-Creative Commons musician is that no one notices you because your stuff just sits on SoundCloud and YouTube and doesn't spread, doesn't share, you see, and that's the trick. That's the trick with Creative Commons, is that attribution is a condition of reproducing the work. They have to link back to you. They have to credit you. So everyone finds me. I get these emails from people going, dude, I want your songs to be played at my funeral. Your songs got me through a difficult time. It's really deep connections. And I think that is exactly what this next kind of phase of the internet is about. It's about deeper connections and not just numbers. So I'm really like, it's all an experiment for me. Like I said, I wish I could say I'd earned like tens of thousands of dollars through this. Like I said, I've earned about 10,000 in total in the last 5 years, and that is from all the commissions and all the licenses and all the royalty streaming and all of everything combined. And that's been the first 5 years. And now what I'm finding is I'm picking up a new patron a week. My output has gone up because I'm more motivated to do this. So it's a very exciting time for me, and that's why I'm reaching out to guys like you, is because I really believe in this, and I think that it's time now for people to start to like look at Creative Commons music as a viable alternative or a career path to being, for example, going for the brass ring, to going for the jackpot, trying to become the touring artist that hopefully gets picked by some, I don't know, faceless person higher up the chain. That's not my path. What I'm doing is serving people directly. So that's the whole message behind it, I guess. But I mean, at the heart of it all, it's just about a habit I've got. And the habit is I can't stop making music. I have to sit down in front of the synthesizer and do something cool every day. Otherwise I go nuts, you know? Yeah.
That reminds me a lot of, so there was this conversation I was having with a friend of mine, and we're saying, okay, maybe like 20, 30 years ago, these bands would come out and they'd get a lot of fans and they'd be huge bands, right? So these fans would say, I like this music so much, I want to learn more about the artist. And then there's the interviews, the stuff in magazines and stuff that they would just like want to find more about their favorite singer, their favorite guitarist. And as times went on, it was kind of almost flipped a little bit, where now to get your music out there, usually it's this person, maybe they're on YouTube, maybe they do some type of social media kind of thing. And then they discover, oh, they also make music. So then that's how the music gets popular. So it almost switched the path. First it was musician. I want to learn more about the musician. And then now it's like, oh, this person, they also make music. So it's kind of reminds me a little bit of that kind of pathway.
Yeah. I wish I'd been alive in the 60s and 70s just so I could have a basis of comparison. I've heard a lot of people say music used to be the product and now it's the starting point. And I think on the surface, that's an easy thing to agree with, because you have this idea of like, you know, the great classic rock album or whatever that just made everyone go crazy and everyone fell in love with it. But there was a hell of a lot of hype and marketing spend behind those bands too. They were top-notch talent, of course, but it's just that kind of the glory of the past is an illusion type of thing. Like people like to think that back in the day, things were very different to how they are now. And they're not. But one major difference is that because this is at the heart of what the internet has changed, is this e-commerce idea, which is a product, a digital product. The cost of reproduction is zero. Now that has never been seen before for any product. So in the last 30 years, we've seen people selling T-shirts, going, okay, this is going to cost a certain amount, and then I can, put a profit on it. But what the internet has flipped, and this is a kind of a Seth Godin, I don't know if you know Seth Godin, but this way of thinking is that when a product costs nothing to reproduce, then it has to, you have to find a way for people to share it on your behalf in order to become relevant, because the majority of products on the market are going to be the equivalent of spam or products that no one buys. And if you look at Amazon or any kind of major online reseller, you'll see that the long tail exists. It's 50% of the products on Amazon are one sale or less. So that's the reality of what happens. Yeah, that's what happens when you have a system where products cost nothing to reproduce. Everyone's just free to put their stuff online and hope for the best. So if that's the situation as an artist, which is what we're seeing now as a music artist, and everyone's got a bit of a music artist in them. Everyone puts their stuff online. So what is it that makes you stand out? What is it that makes people listen to your track and go, this is great, or I really need some kind of social status by sharing this with my circle? well, the music can be really so freaking shit hot that people just cannot help but share it. But the chances are more likely that the general vibe around it is the conditions are favorable. And so what I'm doing here, and this is like my mantra, this is like my North Star, is create favorable circumstances. You're not actually trying to grow a plant. What you're trying to do is put a seed in the ground, water it, and leave it in the sun. See, there's a difference. I don't have the power to grow a plant, but what I can do is show up at a live stream every day, connect with people on a real level, connect with you guys on a real level, and just, do what I'm saying I'm going to do, and just deliver the music, So it's all very exciting and all that, and it's draining. I'm sure you guys both know how it can be soul destroying, yeah. And
it's a lot of work that goes behind it, and people don't realize that.
Yeah.
It's really,
it's so interesting. I grew up in the 80s and the 90s when, the age of the rock star really. And then over time we saw the devaluation of music, with the streaming platforms and everything. And now being on completely the other side of it. And I'm not on the fan side, I'm on the production side, I'm also on the label side. How do you feel that Creative Commons ties in to like the devaluation of music? Because now we see artists getting paid, 0.0056 cents per play on Spotify. When we used to just only go to the record store and buy a whole album and then the label would take a cut. How do you feel about how Creative Commons ties into that, especially now that music is just accessible and basically you can just download it for free everywhere? How does that tie in to your mission?
Well, it's true that music has been devalued. If you think of the volume that's come out in the last, in the internet era, the volume has gone up, a millionfold of music being released. So what I think of it is as the music itself, the good stuff that we all resonate with and gravitate around has not actually been devalued. It's the stuff at the top of the pyramid. And if you think of it as a pyramid, maybe in the past it had 1 or 2 or 3 layers, but now it's got another 100 layers below. So there's this constant hum of, I don't know what you want to call it, like music that has been published that's kind of like a first draft, it's someone's first attempt at doing something, but there's no barrier to publishing it, man. You just click upload on SoundCloud. So as a whole, if an alien were to land here, I'm not saying the aliens are in but if they were to look at the pyramid as a whole and say, okay, well, only 1% of music in the world is actually listened to or is valued, then sure, it's tempting to think that music is devalued. But actually, the good stuff has always been there, and the rest it's just, I don't know, I call it the avalanche of mediocrity. It's noise. It's the noise, and what we're all looking for is the signal. So the signal itself is just as valuable as it's always been. That's the ability for music to connect. And people have always copied music. It's never been as easy as it has now, and there's always been a price attached to it. You had to buy the cassette to bootleg or whatever. Now you pay, nothing, and server charges and Wi-Fi. So I think the way that Creative Commons plugs into that is it's an attempt, at least on my part, to be more of signal than noise, because I've got a choice. I can put up tracks on Spotify on my John Bartmann profile or my other profiles and say to my friends, here's a Linktree link, please listen to my track on Spotify. And then a couple of well-meaning family and friends will inevitably click through and say how amazing it is. But generally what's not going to happen is that tipping point, that critical mass is not going to happen by you just going around saying, please listen, please listen, please listen. And this is a disillusion that follows a lot of first-time artists who are so excited to get their stuff out there. The truth is that Spotify is not a store. It's not a mall. It's a database. It's not where you go to get something cool. It's where, generally speaking, people list their music as a sort of public bulletin board that is available for anyone to listen to at any time. But the majority of people are walking past that bulletin board on their way to something they actually care about. So to make someone stop and look at your stuff, it means that you've got to become the thing that they actually care about. And so I don't know how to do that, but my guess is that by rallying around this ideology of the common good and the future, the way the internet keeps on fighting to be free, as opposed to closed systems, which we see, the major tech companies have their interests in doing that. So yeah, I've got a lot of this kind of academic and intellectual background behind it, and I've been honing these thoughts for years, and I always look for opportunities to pin people to the wall at parties and talk to them about the music industry. But I've also just matured now. Like, I'm a father now. I'm 42 years old. I'm not actually like raging to be a full-time touring musician anymore. It's not really my ambition. So now I've got like maybe 40 years left of life, maybe 50. I'm like, I'm always going to make music. There's no doubt. There can't come a time where I'm like, oh, that music thing was fun. Sure, give it up if you're able to, but I'm not. So I've got a choice to make.
I know that
like,
feeling.
Okay, what am I going to do? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, so we've got this choice to make. Like, what are we going to do? Are we going to keep on aiming for a hit, or am I just going to kind of carry on just throwing seeds into the soil and seeing what sprouts? And in my experience,
it's honestly a much more noble way to go about it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, but I think sorry, don't get me wrong. Like, I am interested in like recouping costs. I mean, I feel like for the amount of time I've put into this, it's like, I could earn a bit more, but it's not the primary goal. The primary goal is to stay in the habit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, going back to what you said about Spotify, one of the most common questions that I receive, within my community is, how do I put myself out there? How do I promote my music? They've gotten to the point where they have an album, they have it released, and my first answer is always like, well, you need to start, making videos about it or make some social media posts about it. And that is like the one thing that they don't want to do, which is promote their music, right? Which is like, okay, you made the music, great. But you don't want to promote it. So I think, the Creative Commons path is so relevant to today's times, because if you're making music, why not put some music out there that other people can use that might, become algorithmic all of a sudden, like you did in your, CBS documentary that you were talking about, the big one, where it got over 10 million plays, and it was like music by, right there on the bottom. Yeah. And that's so many eyeballs on that description in that YouTube video that totally would lead back to you.
Yeah, look, it's an unusual pitch, right? I mean, if you said to someone, I want you to write me 500 tracks of music, and you probably won't get paid a lot for them, but one day maybe someone important will come along. And like, that's not a very good pitch, but I don't
doesn't have much appeal, right? But still,
yeah. I mean, this is all about like, trying to reach a point of success as an artist. And I think a lot of people who listen to this, to Harmonic Horizons, want to, like me, stay in the habit. But if we're being honest, like, hand on our hearts, honest, like, I think fewer people would actually want to be like real music producing, like whatever, like for a high level of production than they say they would, because it takes a certain amount of your soul, and it's an uncomfortable thing, right? You know what I mean? Like, you don't know if it's going to work. It's all risky. You got to fight against all these kind of creative interference and that type of thing. It's definitely not as glamorous. I've spoken to a lot of people in that position who are, in-house composers for shows, and people in, friends of mine in Europe and stuff who've done good work for productions you've probably heard of. And they often got like a bit of a grit in their teeth, like, like, I wish I could have done it on my own terms or whatever. And so at the very least, I've got that, where it's like, right now, okay, so for the next 2 weeks, I've got this is now my offering, is I'm working on cyberpunk theme music, because I'm inspired by the game and the soundtrack. But after that, I'll flip the switch and I'll be like, what's next? Or I'll ask the supporters, like, what should I do next? And it doesn't have to be a different genre, but actually the next step in my own path is to place less emphasis on producing music and putting it into my list, but to focus more on actually educating people around Creative Commons and the use of Creative Commons, because the videos that are on YouTube are kind of old and they don't really do a good job of explaining it. So I'm going to be focusing now. This is my kind of sea change. I'm going to keep on going with music, but basically I want people to know about this stuff, and not, I want young guys or young people to realize that it doesn't just have to be like, you have to get like dressed up in stylish clothes and get a shit hot video and like, aim
right.
for the record label deal. Like, there are other ways of going about, doing your art and being passionate about it and stuff. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah. And that's a good point, right? Because it seems like everyone's trying to go through this one door, and then you can just look over here and there's all these other possibilities over there. And I like the way how you're saying that through Creative Commons, it's almost like a vehicle to showcase what you do in a different way. Like, before the internet was a huge thing in social media was kind of a big thing. What we used to do is we're like, okay, how do we get our like self-homemade website out there? So we're like, okay, what's something that everybody uses? Money. So we'd put our website link on money. And then later on, someone's like, hey, that's like defacing currency and like you can actually get in trouble for that. We're like, okay, so we stopped doing that. And then like the next thing, we're like, okay, well, what can we do now? So we're like thinking printing out like our album cover, right? Like through like a shitty printer, and then putting like a fake like CD cover, not fake, but it's like just our version of it. And then going to Best Buy or Circuit City when that was still around and just like putting those on the shelf. So when someone's like, oh, what's this? And they go to buy it and then they go to the line and they try to scan it. Like, this doesn't exist. What mystery is this? And then it becomes like the
gosh, John, you were such a hacker, dude.
You try, but
that. Wait, so you're writing your band name on like $1 bills and just putting them into circulation. Was that the idea?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But going back even farther than that, I mean, when my day, it was like, in order to get our name out there, you had to play shows. Like straight up, like that was the only way that people were going to hear about you was actually performing at, whether it was like we had a battle of bands back in the day, right?
Oh, those are fun.
Battle of the bands, right? Or any sort of like virality, like doing posters, flyers, things like that, But like, I think, going back to your point about working for like a major studio or something, I think most people who are in the game right now, and maybe even most people who are listening to this show, they just want to be recognized for the music that they make. It's not like they want to like, get signed and like go on a tour or something. They just want to be recognized for the music that they make. Like that was good. That's like, maybe build a small fan base, get some reviews in, something like that to make them feel like the work that I put in was worth it because it got, a public approval, right? Like people really enjoyed my music. Just maybe it's one person, maybe it's 10 people, maybe it's 1,000, right?
Sure,
it starts with that first, like, I love your album, like, and saying like, or the purchases, like, buying stuff on Bandcamp, things like that. I think, the pathway to getting your music out there could be something like this. I mean, even though Creative Commons doesn't have a nice ring to it, but it's still like, if you think about what you're actually talking about, it's making music to put it out there so other people can enjoy, use, reproduce it in certain ways. But the whole thing is that's that seed that you're planting. You never know where that seed's going to grow. You never know how strong those roots are going to be. But once you put that seed out there, you're throwing it to the wind, and then maybe it's going to land somewhere, and it's going to get watered, and it's going to grow into something. You don't know, right?
And that's true of every musician, even those who've picked the more commercial path, where they're paying for promo and paying for radio play and getting PR agencies. Like I used to work for a PR agency, and our job was just spamming people basically with the new artists that had paid for the publicity. If that's your path, I think that's great. But it's still a crapshoot, At least with the idea of Creative Commons, what you don't get is major label support in producing like really good quality records. So most of what I do is just done here in this dark room. And I've always found a place wherever I am. Like even I was working in South Korea as a teacher for 2 years, converted 1/4 of my room to a studio, like surefire every day making music. So that's a natural thing, for a lot of us, is to like find a corner of our den and just kind of like go and like claim a kind of man cave of some kind. But I mean, at least you're retaining your rights that way, like the second you start signing away stuff that you've written, you can lose out big time. I'm not afraid of that. Like I'd probably sign away some of this catalog if anyone was interested in buying it, but I'm actually not free to do that anymore because I've already stated that it's Creative Commons. So. Anyway,
how does one, it might be different here in the States, but how does one register their track? Say they have like an album or something that they want to become Creative Commons. Is there like a common pathway to do that? Like a central hub, like a website or something, or somewhere you register your music?
Well, yeah. So creativecommons.org, which I'll read it off here for you. It's the Creative Commons is an international non-profit organization that empowers people to grow and sustain the thriving commons of shared knowledge and culture. So it's actually just an organization started by a lawyer called Lawrence Lessig, who's probably the most respected lawyer by musicians in the world. He's probably the coolest lawyer in the world. This idea of let's give people a legal code that they can arm themselves with in the event of any legal proceedings. The irony of this whole thing is that these things never make it. These things never go to court. No one's ever heard of a Creative Commons court battle because it's just not worth anyone's time. It's not like Jay-Z versus Beyonce, who sampled who. It's not at that level. And so if you think,
well, they're married. I don't know how you could sample each other.
You know what I'm saying? Like whatever.
Yeah. I know what you're saying.
But there's this ecosystem happening, and you've got the tall trees, and they kind of block out the light, and then you've got the undergrowth, and it's small, but it relies on itself. It relies on other species in the undergrowth or whatever. And I think the way I envision it, because I love spending time in forests, man, that's like my thing, is like these tall trees, their destiny is to fall and become food for the undergrowth. And then the undergrowth's destiny is to become middle growth and then upper growth. And this is whole cycle. But I just think that the internet has completely accelerated this whole thing. Whereas now we don't all have to climb these big trees and to get to the top level. There is this new middle or lower or middle tier that you want to call, which is self-publishing. People have never in the past, before like the 90s, had the ability to just put their stuff out there. It's changed everything. It's changed everything. And I just think it's been 30 years or maybe 40 years of internet now. And these types of ideologies are starting to slowly get into people's mindsets like, oh, okay, it's different to radio play because I don't have to ship anyone a CD master. I don't have to print out 10,000 CD masters and ship them to radio anymore. I can find people in my town, and maybe 100 of them have got $6 a month to support my work, and that's all I'm asking for. I'm not actually trying to make the millions here, That idea of like we're actually free to choose the level at which we want to succeed. And like I said, not everyone wants to be like a top-notch music producer. You lose a lot of your rights. You get no recognition, like you said, Chris. You might feel pressure or creative interference. So what I'm trying to do here is disrupt this idea of the glamour of the high levels of the music industry. I would like to pull the veil from that and say, okay, sure, I've never actually been touring in the States or whatever, but I can, you can sort of, as you get older, you start to realize certain things are true and certain things are bullshit. And I just think a lot of it is not worth aiming for. Whereas having an independent, albeit smaller, vessel of your own to sail and navigate as you wish, like that to me sounds way more appealing in the long term. Okay, so that's just one person. What I think doesn't really matter that much. Let's take Jack Conte. Jack Conte, founder of Patreon, $1 billion company now, CEO, talented musician, etc. So I watched a talk of his 2 weeks ago, and he's got a very forward-thinking view. He's one of those guys like the CEO of this company with 400 employees in front of everybody going, yeah, you guys can use Patreon if you want, but you can use any of our competitors. It doesn't matter. And everyone's just like, oh, dude, like you can't say that. Anyway, it's one of those types of talks where it's like, it feels free and easy and it feels honest. And this dude's envisioning the next level of the web and where this is all going. And I think that a lot of these ideas that I'm taking from my sort of icon or hero, Seth Godin, the way that this man, this weedy-looking guy from New York, upstate New York, has been writing and thinking about this stuff for 20, 30 years and way ahead of the curve. And now I'm starting to see, okay, maybe this stuff is worth taking seriously. Maybe it's worth investing my life in because I've got a wife and kids and I've got to fight for this time every day that I use, to spend on my music. So I've got skin in the game here. So that's the point. Advantages for doing this too are the idea of parity. So the United States obviously has a lot of purchasing power compared to the rest of the world. It doesn't take a lot to pay a South African person or an Indian person like a good salary. So there's this real reciprocal value going on where someone from the States might go, it's the price of a cup of coffee a month, and someone from India might go, this is going to feed my family, So there's a lot of opportunity here is what I'm saying. And Patreon has enabled that. And I just think Web 3.0, whatever it looks like, is going to have to rely on these kind of more deep connections between people as opposed to, like we bought some followers on Facebook like 10 years ago. My friend actually bought them without me knowing. He's like, yeah, we need to boost our fan base. I'm like, okay. So we bought, and it was so easy. You just buy numbers. So if the game is that rigged against people without any purchasing power of their own, independent people like me, we don't have a choice. We have to find alternatives. We have to find alternatives to the...
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm right there on board with you because, coming back from the past, I've been in the label game for 10 years. We started our record labels 10 years ago. And in that time, we saw just a seismic shift between, the values of the old where people were really like, they wanted, us to make hard copies of everything. And now it's sort of shifted into this place where it's all digital, right? And, we've also seen the sort of rise of sites like Bandcamp that have really just put the publishing in the artist's hands and said, here's a platform for you. You guys take it for what, whatever you want to do with it. And that's really created a lot of, open opportunities for independent artists to like start a Bandcamp, get their name out there, sell their music to anyone all over the world. Right. And use that as sort of their base and hub to just, grow from there, fan base, whatever it is. They give you mailing lists. They give you everything you need to grow your community right there on Bandcamp. Yeah. It's exciting. Yeah.
I mean, not everyone agrees with this stuff, but I mean, I'm curious to hear what you guys think. Like, so you offered a bit of input. What about you, John? What do you think about all this stuff? I'm just kind of like spewing out. What is your take on all this?
It's honestly interesting because coming into the internet and all that stuff, and when MySpace was going around, putting bulletins, adding friend requests, remember how that little phase was going on? Oh, yeah. It seemed at first a little bit encouraging that there was a whole new medium out there, but then at some point it became discouraging because, like you're saying, all the noise is out there, and you put so much time into these tracks and this music, and you look around and there's a million people doing the same thing. You're like, oh gosh, what am I doing? I'm just going to get lost in the shuffle. So there is that concept. So going a different path and kind of like separating your signal from noise, I do like that analogy there, is almost enlightening again, because it's hard to just make some tracks. Even like, let's say, for example, we just erased everyone's mind about Metallica's Black Album, right? Nobody knew what it was. And let's say right now, this band called Metallica just comes together and then they write this Black Album nowadays. And they're like, let me put this on Bandcamp. They are not going to have the amount of success that they have right now than they would back then, because it's a different time, different path, right? Yeah. So it's like, how do you get to that spot? And that's kind of what I was going with earlier, where before it was the band, you want to learn about the band, and then now it's like you want to learn about the person, and then you discover the treasures and wealth they have to give you after that. So it's different. It's a hard way to navigate, and I don't even know if I haven't figured it out. I don't know if really anybody has, but that definitely gives hope out there for something like that.
Yeah. I mean, we're living in an amazing time for the independent artist. I wouldn't have liked to be 30 years younger and feeling frustrated because all I wanted to do was play a bit of guitar, but you didn't have a choice. Now at least I can do it. Like I can spend an hour or two a day playing a bit of guitar and feel like it's not worth nothing because I started my Patreon. Patreon's very new for me. Okay, I ran a Patreon for my podcast a while ago. It didn't really work. I signed up like 4 years ago, but I didn't try anything with it. And then I took that first account, and now I've started pushing it by actually releasing the Creative Commons. What do you want to call them? Assets. So they're a combination of music tracks, sometimes stems and stingers, and like short bits that people can use in the video. But now the recent push has been self-contained, like zero dependency Ableton Live templates, which I'm releasing under Creative Commons. So the idea
what is that? Kind of go into that a little bit, like doing templates of stuff?
Yeah. So, firstly, let's define this. Okay. So template, let's say I download a template and I push play. I'm not going to hear anything because it's a selection of pre-populated or they're a selection of tracks pre-populated with devices and effects, like effects chains. So for example, a typical template would be like, if it was a rock band template, it would be like all the drum recording channels, all the guitar recording channels, a couple of buses, going to a pre-master, going to a master. And then the idea there would be that you open the template and then you just put the mics in place and hit record and the band was ready to go. But if you actually just push play right after opening it, it would be empty. What I do is I release the actual composition. So it's a project file. It's not the template. It's the self-contained project file. I just use template because it's too difficult to explain in a YouTube title. But so I release the actual music. I compose the music like I breathe, like constantly just outputting new stuff in various genres. And instead of trying to, like I said, push those as commercial release albums, what I do is I publish the self-contained Ableton templates via Patreon. Wow. So most of them are behind the paywall. Some of them are free. So if you go to the free stuff in my Patreon, you'll see, and you'll be able to download a zip file, which has got an Ableton Live 11 template in it. And then if you open that file up and you push play, you'll hear exactly the entire full song as you did in the YouTube video that probably got you.
That is clever right there. Because there's times where if people just buy like a certain track or something, it's what they want, but like maybe they want this bridge to be like, I don't know, 8 bars longer, and cutting everything just as a stereo track doesn't necessarily make a good edit, right? So you have all the individual tracks, you have the project file, you can kind of fade things in and out as you want to. So it's a little bit easier, and you kind of give them more control. That's brilliant right there.
Well, I mean, that kind of feedback is so valuable to me, John, because I'm in this process of trying to figure out who I'm trying to serve. I don't know if the people who are going to download these things. So I've got four patrons now. Okay, whoop-de-doo, like $18 a month. I'm aiming for 100 by say the end of the year. That'd be nice, $100 a month. But right now I've got these 4 people, and I don't know what they're into it for. Now I gather that most people support artists like me on Patreon because it's a feel-good thing. Like, this guy's doing good work. You know, he deserves a couple of bucks. But there are going to be people amongst this crowd that grows who want it for different reasons. They want an Ableton project file so that they can download the stuff and upload it in one of their productions. So maybe they want it for a video or for a game. Maybe there's someone else in that group who wants it because they're new to Ableton Live and they don't want to start with a blank slate. So they just want it as a sort of tutorial thing. Maybe there's someone else in there who says, this is great, but I actually want to change all the plugins in this track and just use the guitar part and then remix it. I don't know. Right. So I've got to figure it out. So the more specific you get, the more likely you are to find that small group of people that can support you, you know, financially, emotionally. So I'm in the process of learning, and what you've just said has been interesting to me for that reason. Like, I
would see it almost like, you know, when you buy preset packs or you're kind of looking out there and there's like the sample track of what sounds there are in this pack, right? A lot of the times those tracks are really, really cool, right? Because the goal is to get this preset pack out there. So you're going to spend time making that track. And a lot of the times those are some of my favorite songs of other people, like stuff from Avenger. Like some of those tracks that they put together are pretty good. So it kind of has me thinking, so if this is this track that goes with this preset thing, and then there's this template that you're saying, and like, this is really cool. If this is Creative Commons, and I had this session right in front of me, maybe I don't like this lead on this part. It's cool, but maybe I want something a little bit different. So I can maybe mute that track, put my own lead over it, and kind of work with it like a preset. If there's a preset that we might like the sound of it. Oh, the LFO is a little too fast. Let me dial that down a little bit. Exactly. The reverb's too much, and then you kind of mold it to what you need. So I think that's a really cool concept to give people like that.
Yeah, I mean, it might create difficulties later down the line because rights management and all this. There are millions of questions and all that. But I'm just curious. Yeah. I'm just, like I said, throwing seeds on the ground. Who knows where it goes? And I'm just curious. Yeah, I just want to see what happens.
Well, speaking as someone who has a pretty active Patreon community, and I've been using Ableton for the past 11 years, right? I think one of the strengths of Ableton Live is got to be the racks. Like, you can build really complex effects racks, things like that. I think you know, that's one of the things you might consider is doing custom racks that do different things. You know, chains of effects. You know, that combinations that maybe someone who's actually, you know, a experienced Ableton user might not have thought of before. Racks that have, you know, assigned macros that do different things. You know, that's always popular, at least on within my community.
Well.
Dude, that's how Brian, you know, Brian Funk. Have you heard of Brian Funk? I think I linked in my email.
The name sounds familiar. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he's this cool guy. He's a New York musician, and he's been active selling these Ableton Live device presets for about 8 to 9 years. He used to go by ADM, Afro DJ Mac. And I heard about him, and I heard about Gumroad, which is another thing we should chat about, because everybody who's selling anything online, any creative person, needs to hear and know about Gumroad. And he's done what looks like very well. Basically, I think he's hit it out the park in terms of earnings. For the last 10 years, he's been selling these things, and his growth trajectory has basically gone exponential now. Like, the Gumroad community pushes him. Like, his discovery is through the charts. So that's an example of someone who got in early and stuck with it, as opposed to someone who got in early and gave up when there were no sales, or got in early and then decided to change something. He just stuck with it. Right. So I was on his podcast, and he was talking about the same stuff. And Ableton Live device presets do surprisingly well. I think people are always going to be looking for ways to just change their sound, or have a quicker way to get something done, or to as a form of inspiration. Like, what does this do? Like,
absolutely.
Yeah. That's how I've learned a lot of Ableton stuff myself too, is just downloading like racks, free and paid, hearing how people do things. Everyone uses OTT, so I'm like, okay, OTTs. But I mean, you guys know Ableton probably a lot better than me, because Well, I mean, in synths in general, like, you know, so the chat that you had with Dash and them, I was with Dash a while back on Harmonic Horizons. You know, that's one of the ones I listened to in full. And, and Omri Cohen too, who I'm also a big fan of. I've experimented with the VCV rack for a while. That guy's crazy. I love him. I didn't know he played the cello.
He's very knowledgeable, especially about
he also listens to the show. He loves the show, so shout out.
He loves the show. Yeah, cool. Omri, I'm a big fan, dude. I love your stuff.
So and it kind of reminds me, like, kind of going off your devices thing. We're all guitar players, right? So have you ever been to a guitarist and you see their pedal and you kind of geek out for a little bit, like, oh, it's your pedal, and like every guitar player loves to talk about their pedals, right? They're like, oh, dude, come over here, check this out. I'm like, so I have this one going into this guy, and I can bypass this and go into this. So it's almost kind of like that, but in software, and you're kind of making. Yeah. I don't know, that's how I see it. It's coming from like guitar background as well. It's like a guitar pedal board that you're kind of routing and making how you want to, and it's your own personalized thing. So depending on what you put in there, you're going to get so many different results. And I think that's part of the reason why it does so well out there. Like giving a guitar pedal to someone.
Yeah. Have either of you gone down the rabbit hole with Max for Live?
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, I have not. Chris probably has. I switched over to Bitwig thanks to Dash.
And they've made it even easier with 12. They just added a performance pack inside of Ableton 12, so you can build your own Max for Live device right there inside of Ableton. It's, quite crazy and accessible.
Okay, great. So because I know 11, you're able to load Max for Live devices by default, which from 10, before 10, I think it wasn't possible. So now you say you're actually able to. They've included the patch environment.
Yeah, it's called the performance pack. It's this extra download thing where you could download it. Somebody created an environment that you can, but they're pushing it right there on the main site. So
that's great. Cool.
Yeah, it's very accessible.
Pretty amazing. Things like that. It's like a laboratory of sound design. That Pure Data Reactor. I mean, depending on how deep you want to go into it, but
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
man,
most DAWs are going in this direction. Though. I mean, John uses Bitwig now, and he was recently turned on to it. In the past 4 or 5 months. I mean,
really?
Now
I started it like really hardcore in January.
Okay.
So,
Let's talk about that, man, because I'm on this fence now. I'm like, okay, if I've got some dollars to spend by Black Friday this year, I'm going to need to make a decision on whether it's Ableton 12 or
it's the time to do it.
So advantages. Well, I mean, why did you convert? What's your testimony?
So I started initially with FL Studio in like 2004 or 5 because it was like the only one really out there, and it was cool. And I had known nothing of it at the time. And then a couple of years passed. I go to school for audio, and then I learned Pro Tools, which everybody uses out in the world. So that was kind of cool, but it was hard adjusting from like the weird workflow of FL to like the linear DAW, which took a little time, but it was fine. And then I kind of got sick of using that as a creative thing. So I'm like, that's a more of a work-orientated program for me. I don't want to come home and be creative in like my work environment. So I went back to FL Studio. And then more and more I would hear Bitwig coming out, Bitwig here, Bitwig here. I'm like, I was kind of flirting with the idea for a little bit, but I'm like, no, John, don't look. She's too beautiful. so then after that, I was like, okay, let me find some other stuff out there. I had like a PreSonus interface, and like they're like, oh, you have a free version of Studio One. I'm like, okay, cool. Downloaded that. I'm like, let me see how this is. Made no sense to me. And I'm like, John, I know it's a new DAW. You have to work through this crutch here. You can't just use your own workflow, what you used before. Fine. Still didn't like it, uninstalled it. And then I tried to get Ableton, but I don't know. For some reason, it just didn't click. And I closed that chapter for a while. And then got back on Bitwig, and I saw Dash using it. And I'm like, shit, man.
No, be honest, John. It was this show. It was the guest on this show.
Yeah, it was this show. Yeah,
that was like, hey, you got to try it. You're like, all right, I'm gonna do it. Now. And we're like, yeah, go ahead. Like this is it. And then a couple episodes later, you're like, oh yeah, dude.
After talking with Dash, like has to know he uses it, and then like Omni started using it as well. I'm like, okay, now I feel confident in my choice, and it's cool, man. It like. Where everything is, you would expect it to be, right? Where's this thing here? It's right there. And then the grid is really cool too. I mean, you can build your own effects. That's one thing that blew my mind on this show, what Dash was saying. He's like, yeah, so if I don't have an effect, I just build it. I'm like, hold up. It's like, you just build, what do you mean you just build it? Like you just, what? Yeah, if I need a chorus or something, if I need like a multi-tap delay that does some weird stuff, you just build it in the grid as a device. Then you can save that as a preset, and boom, mind blowing. And then I started doing that, and then I was making my own choruses now, and dude, it's so cool. So, I mean, that's the side of Bitwig for me that's really cool. I don't really use Ableton. That's Chris's specialty right there. But, they're very similar. very similar programs.
Well, that helps with the cross grade, right? Is
and a lot of the shortcuts are the same too, like the shift tab to like move to the different windows, and
Yeah.
So let's go back to the Creative Commons thing. I want to ask you, if say you was a new artist out there who's listening to the show, how would they get involved with Creative Commons work? What would be the sort of like default pathway that they could go and just, doing what you do, or get their name out there? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Asking for everyone who's curious. Yeah.
I'm actually very curious.
Well, it's not like a dividing line, like you have to be, Creative Commons or commercial. The point is, so the answer is you familiarize yourself with what level of rights you're actually prepared to give to the community. So if you put your stuff on SoundCloud, and that means you're the 100%, let's say you create a track, you write it and you mix it, master it yourself, you upload it to SoundCloud, that means you're the 100% rights owner of the master, recording, and the composition. Those two rights belong to you in perpetuity. Now, they always will, but in terms of publishing, what you're able to then say is, I want people who use the internet to be able to reproduce this work that I've put up on SoundCloud in their YouTube videos and whatever, mobile games or whatever. And in exchange for that right that I've now state in the description of the SoundCloud track or the YouTube video, I state publicly that this is a Creative Commons track, and the specific tier, the amount of rights that I want to give away. And I keep doing this because I think there are 4 tiers. And this is just information on the site, and it's quite widely available. The amount of rights that I would like to contribute is that this person is allowed to put it on their video. And that means that they will never fear any legal repercussions. But the condition is that in the video that they publish it on, or in the mobile game that they publish it on, they have to state that I am the original author and provide a link to my site.
That's that seed.
The name of the track, or whatever your stated conditions are. So it's really just as simple as including a line or two of text underneath a video. That's how you become a Creative Commons musician. If you've sold those rights already to a publisher, now let's say you've got a label and you say, I now want this label to promote this track using PR methods with the goal of being placed in a film or signed by a higher label or whatever. That means that you can't actually then just state in the video, in the YouTube video, this is also a Creative Commons track, because it means that you're putting forth conflicting circumstances. On the one hand, your label that you've signed to and they've paid you or given you an advance or something, they're not going to be happy about the fact that you're turning to another group of people and saying, don't worry about my label, guys, you're free to reproduce this. Because when you sign the contract, you're unable to represent the music in full. So that's the complicated answer. But the real... as simple as it is literally just putting a line in your description saying this is a CC-BY track. That's the tier that I choose, which means Creative Commons BY, which stands for attribution, which means that anyone who wants may download that track from anywhere I publish it, basically. Free Music Archive is the most widely used. I've got like almost 1 million plays on that now. Spotify, you can't download tracks directly, but you can rip them, and you can rip them from YouTube and blah, blah, blah. So the point is, once someone sees the description that I've published on my channel saying this is a CC BY track, they're legally and they're allowed to republish it only if they comply with the conditions, which is that they have to actually credit me. Now, if I can use this opportunity to take this conversation a little bit forward, this is where it gets really exciting for me. About 2 weeks ago, someone contacted me from the Netherlands and said, hi there, I see you're a leading CC musician. We'd like you to consider putting your catalog on our system. And I immediately rolled my eyes because I get these emails all the time. But what made this one different is that this group called Frequency Music is a label from, I think they've probably got in the tens of millions of plays now on YouTube. So they formerly represented artists. That was their job. Now they're seeing this gap or this new technological advancement in Content ID on YouTube. the way Content ID works is that you, when you publish music using a DistroKid or a label, like an aggregator like that, there's a box that you can tick. All of them have it. And it says, I want this to be visible in Content ID on YouTube, which enables you for monetization. That means that if someone uses that track in their video on YouTube, that means that you're eligible for some of the monetization that might result from YouTube.
Yeah.
It's tempting to tick the box because you want money, but the reason I never do that is because as a Creative Commons musician, you can't actually do that. It's the same as the example I said a minute ago of the publisher.
Yeah, with the label.
You can't get paid by both. So I leave that unticked. Now, what that means is that there are a lot of people downloading the music that I've published over the years and using it in their videos, and most of them attribute it to me correctly, which is why I have like fantastic search engine optimization and lots of inbound links, and a lot of people know about me, and I've got a name, basically. It's because I've got a lot of link traffic coming to my name because I've been publishing CC music for the last 5 years under those conditions. But there are a lot of people who are not using the correct attribution. That means that they're just uploading they think, okay, it's free music. The guy gave it for free, download it, put it in your video. No copyright strike because I haven't ticked that box saying it's eligible for monetization. So no one is actually, no one's crediting me as they should. And I don't know who they are because I'm not going to go through every YouTube video trying to find it. But that's what Frequency has done. Frequency has built a tool which allows you to have access to the data that YouTube has access to in terms of Content ID, which is miraculous because now it means I've got a dashboard where I can see, this is all very new, so they haven't actually started monitoring yet, but I can see that this is about to kick in. And within the next 2 or 3 weeks, what I anticipate is starting to see some stats from really, really high-ranking popular videos that are using my music and not attributing it correctly, which is very exciting because it means I have the weight of the law at my back. I get to say to them, please change the wording in the description of your video to include a link to my YouTube channel, or by the terms of the CC Music agreement that you have agreed to when you use my music, you should be forwarding some of the monetization money to me. So it's get paid or get noticed. So it's only a win for me. Yeah. And that's why I paid attention. I spent an hour on the phone with them and I paid attention to and I think that they have entered this place in a very good time, because it means that CC musicians don't just have to be like the beggars at the door, like contributing music for free and hoping for donations. There's actually there is a legal weight that comes with this. It's stated in the code, and the more people that believe in that, like anything, the more people that believe in that, the better it's going to work out for art and creativity in general. And this isn't just about music. This is about, just going back to the site here, the Creative Commons licenses apply to obviously photos and original works, but also like museum art and online courses on Khan Academy and all this kind of stuff. So this is like it's kind of a global movement, and I think that Frequency has a good chance of giving some representation to artists. I'm not really that interested in sitting back and, like a dragon, like trying to hoard more and more like pennies and coins from YouTubers. That's not my goal here. Right. My goal is to learn who's using the music and why, so that I can narrow it down and focus on serving them as best as I can, because I believe that that's the way to earn a loyal following that still stays with you even after Patreon folds in 10 years and the whole monetization thing goes away. Followers are people that are going to follow you to the next platform and then once again pay you $6 a month. That's what I'm interested in creating. I've got about 40 years left. Wish me luck.
So what is Frequency's stake in it? Do they offer this as a paid service, or are they planning to? What do they have? What's their
20%.
skin in the game?
20%.
I see.
So for every $80 or for every $100 I earn, they take 20, which is quite a good rate considering that there's no sign-up charge and well, let's see. I'm not going to become an advocate for them until I see results, but I'm just excited about it. I can tell it's a small team. They're Dutch, which works well for me because it's the same time zone. And also South Africa has a historical connection with the Netherlands. So it just felt kind of right for me right now.
Nice.
Call me back in a year. Let's talk more about it. Maybe I'll be like, screw those guys. Or maybe I'll be like, as a result of those guys, I've actually doubled or tripled my income, or I learned about this video that had 40 million plays and was they used 30 seconds of a track I wrote, and I haven't seen a penny for that. And like that's not right, So I'm prepared to go down that road and see where. I'm just interested. It's the next step in the journey.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, let's see.
It's good you mentioned that too, because like as musicians, creators, and all that stuff, we put a lot of time into things, and there's people out there that's like, this should all be free, and it's like, I get where you're coming from at some point, but a lot of people don't realize how long it takes, like even to put a song together, right? So it's not just the time it takes to learn that song or write that song or record it, mix it. It's all the years before that led you up to that point of, okay, studying some music theory, studying sound design, how do effects work, what is a compressor, what is EQ, why am I using sends instead of inserts? You know, just all those endless amounts of things that all come together at one point to create this track for someone to then listen to.
Not to mention the cost of the gear itself.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So
yeah.
In one sense, like, yes, I can understand why you say, oh, it's just a song. It's just waves that we listen to. Why isn't it free? I'm like, I get that at the same point, but if everything was free, nobody else would do it anymore.
That's what that's what I was talking about, the devaluation of music, right? Yeah, like before it was like you had to spend, actual money on expensive instruments to make music, and you had to get a recording device and everything. Now anyone can make music for free. I mean, if you have a working computer or you have, anything, you can do it for free. And so we're nearing that 0 point, especially we haven't talked about it yet in this conversation, but AI is sort of ringing at the door saying, hey, what's up, guys? Your time is coming to an end, right? But it's true. Yeah. We talked about it with the audio programmer. We talked about it with other guests on the show. Is it, how long is it going to be before we, get to the point where text prompts become actual tracks, right?
Dude, go look at Sona. I think it's Sona Music. Sorry to interrupt you. I'm just going to try to find a link for you right now. So,
but I've often argued that, you can never replace authenticity. No matter how far AI gets, there's always going to be the human need to create something from your own hands or your own, from scratch, right? And there are always going to be that creative endeavors. I think the value of human created music will continue to hold its value, right? Rather than go down as it gets easier and easier and easier for anyone from, anyone in your neighborhood to just create a track, right? It's like, now it'll still be that coveted thing. Like, this was made by human hands. It has that human touch to it. It has that authentic feel to it that AI can't quite reproduce.
And who that person is, right? Through all their life and experiences, they put this track together of what influenced them. You can't really, I get you on that one.
Yeah, for sure.
There'll just be a lot fewer of those people because I think of those, film photographers, like, if you want to hire a film photographer now, you're going to pay a premium.
Oh my gosh! Because of the cost of the actual film. Like actually getting film for cameras costs so much more than it did back in 1989. Like it was like
exactly,
you know what I mean? Like
so the cost of it comes closer and closer to zero, which changes everything. It changes the whole game. I need you to check out Suno.ai, SUNO.ai.
I don't know if I want to, but
I don't know if I'm opening that door.
I don't know if I want to go there, man.
Speaking of the door,
can say, make a song about the moon. It doesn't just generate an instrumental track. It generates a pop vocal singing lyrics that it generated.
Right. Yeah, John's getting into that stuff. That's John's territory.
Dude, look, I went and checked out, my prompt was 90s, like cheesy 90s sitcom music, because that's kind of my shtick.
They probably got a high bass.
Just generated this incredible, just this kind of like cheesy as hell Friends, male voice, female voice, refine, reprocess, change, tweak, change the lyrics, change the style, change the tone of the electric guitar, whatever. So we're at a point now where we're not digging in the ground with shovels anymore. We're using bulldozers. But like you said, the same thing applies. The creativity behind it. It's just a numbers game. It's really just the people right now who are generating music for algorithms to get noticed on YouTube and generating music by using automated tools so that they can avoid doing the emotional labor, which is a term coined in the 60s. I think everyone should know. The emotional labor is what people ultimately are paid for. You can feel, like Chariots of Fire by Vangelis, like you can feel that quality that does not come along easily. It doesn't matter how what your AI or your machine weights are or anything like that. Like this is something
polyphonic aftertouch in the CS80 is
shit. Polyphonic. I'm a believer. I say bring it on. I'm excited about AI. I'm excited about using some of these tools. I'm not worried about becoming obsolete because I'm like, to put it bluntly, I'm the real deal. Like I'm the guy who sits here like really trying and doing okay at creating music that makes people say, I need you to play this at my funeral. Like you don't get that from algorithmic works yet. And if you do, it's not something that's deeply felt. That's my opinion. I mean, I don't know if anyone shares that, but I'm not worried about AI in music, at least. In other fields maybe, but I mean, it sounds to me like most of the stuff on the radio to me right now sounds like it's been automatically generated. It's the same thing again and again. When I hear the opening chords of your average pop song now, and it's a minor chord, I know that it's the -6 chord, which is going to go to a 4, which is going to go to a 1, which is going to go to a 5. And if that's not the chord progression, then it's the same chord progression, just starting from the 3rd chord. So that 1, 5, -6, 4 progression is pop music on the radio. No one's even trying to change that. So it's very, 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 very narrow already. It's very narrow already. And that's what machines do well. They do narrow very well. What we do well as humans is general. Big picture, incorporating new elements, synthesizing new outputs. And the newest element that we're going to incorporate is the use of AI. It's just digging with a bulldozer instead of a shovel. But we're going to continue this thing of outperforming humans, outperforming machines in certain tasks. And one of them is going to be music.
Yeah. I love that. Wow. What a wonderful conversation. So where can anyone find you if they're really interested in John Bartmann, they want to follow what you're doing? So let them know.
Well, you can Google my name, but just remember my surname has 2 N's at the end. And I just say that because it's very easy to mess it up. Yeah. So my name's John Bartmann, JOHN, BARTMANN. Yeah, just search my name anywhere, Google it, or use Ecosia if you want to be ethical, because Google is not actually all it's cracked up to be if you scratch the surface. Then you can also, go find my stuff on all the streaming services. I think all of them. Yeah, I checked like 2 days ago. My latest album's on Spotify and Apple. And then if you need the music, you can't download from Spotify and Apple, right? So if you need the music, if you're a creator now and you're listening and you need the music for your new production and you want to see what I've got or whatever, there's a website called Free Music Archive that you can search my name for too. And I've got almost my entire catalog up there. So that's, about 400 tracks. My website, I've actually...
Nice.
Some of them are drone tracks and stuff, but I've got a fairly decent catalog, and I've sweated over a lot of those tracks. Like a lot of them are quite out there and wacky and original and whatever. And I've got do check out my website. Let me know what you think of that. I've been studying React and JavaScript for the last 4 years. So I actually put together a web app, which is like a Spotify clone. It plays my tracks, and I'm working on refining that to make it a really good user experience. I want people on my site to be able to filter by free, filter by public domain and rights. So it's just like serving the community directly. Like most people want a free track with no rights attached. Cool, go for it. Here are the other tiers, and I want you to be able to quickly link to those, understand the terms, purchase them if you need to, have access to rate cards and discussion and FAQs and all that. So I'm working on the web app, but go check that out. I'm quite proud of it. It's taken a lot of time to learn JavaScript. And then, if you just search, you'll find my stuff everywhere. Even if you search YouTube, you'll find my channel and my videos. My channel's got about 1,000 subs now, but I've only been taking it seriously for about 6 months. So I'm anticipating that number going up. Although it doesn't matter what that number is. I'm more concerned with the number of patrons, because that's where the direct connections are happening. So find me on YouTube. And then you'll also, if you search my name on YouTube, you'll find like music that I've written appearing in videos, which I know have at least 50 million views now. Like all the different videos combined.
That's awesome.
And that's just the ones I know about. With frequency music, I'm hoping to get more data on that so I can find out what type of genre.
Right. You're going to be awake for a couple of days looking at all that. Like, oh my God.
I hope so, yeah. Because I've been releasing this music under the broadest possible license for like 3 years now. So a lot of my stuff is public domain, which means literally I don't have any rights. It's literally like I've given it away. And the irony of that is that I'm getting more interest in my music than I probably could have hoped for trying to do it the commercial route. And then that all said, I mean, I know I'm an advocate for CC music and all that, but we have like my most popular commercial track was a about 250,000 plays on Spotify. It was by a band I used to run called Pravda. I have to give myself a heads up, and yes, I did it, and it's kind of come and gone. But we were kind of this new swing type band, and we got signed to a label in France, and they pushed us, and it became like a big thing. That was cool. So yeah, I've kind of played a little bit of both fields, but I definitely think for the future, someone like me, I'm getting gray hair, I'm a dad, I need to sit down more. This is the way forward. So if you're in that boat, I've spoken about people who want to find my music, just, like to listen to, then people who want to use it, go to Free Music Archive or my website, go download the stuff. You can just use it according to the conditions that are listed there. And then if you're someone who wants to actually like contribute and wants to like be a part of the world or whatever, you can download the Ableton Live templates via my Patreon. You can remix them. I'd love to hear what you come up with. I'd love to see where the music goes and how it travels. It's all a big experiment to me. So yeah, and I guess we're wrapping up now. So yeah, thanks. I really appreciate you guys having me on to talk and to find out a little bit more
absolutely.
about your
Thanks for
worlds
coming
too.
on, man. That's really interesting stuff.
Yeah, thanks.
All right.
I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
If you're interested in supporting the podcast, please subscribe to the Signs of Life and John Audio channels on YouTube. The link for our channels is down below in the description and in the show notes. For the video version of this show, please subscribe to the Harmonic Horizons YouTube channel to keep up with all the latest episodes. For bonus content, including additional podcast material, head over to the Signs of Life Patreon page. Paid members get access to Beyond the Horizon, our new series of extended conversations with our guests, as well as several other benefits such as early access to all of his videos, exclusive ambient tutorials, over 100 preset packs for various synthesizers, one-on-one coaching for ambient and electronic music, and tons more. If you'd like to support John Audio and the work he does, head over to his YouTube channel and subscribe. You can also check out his Gumroad page for a selection of free and paid preset packs. Finally, he has a Patreon page where subscribers get access to additional content, such as exclusive music, presets for various synths such as Pigments and Diva, specialized courses, and more. Harmonic Horizons is hosted on Buzzsprout and is now available on all major platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, and all other major podcast directories. If you'd like to reach out to us or would like to be a guest on the show, you can contact us at harmonichorizonspodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.